Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 25th Let's Talk with the Mayor. We've been doing this for quite a while. We do 4 a year. The purpose of Let's Talk with the Mayor gatherings is to hear from the citizens, to bring government to the citizens. So not only will you be able to speak with the mayor, but we've got the city manager, Mr. Isaiah Hughley, here this evening, Deputy City Manager Lisa Goodwin, and Pam Hodge. And we have department heads and elected officials who represent many different offices and functions of the government. I want to recognize our Mayor Pro Tem, Evelyn Pugh. Raise your hand. She sits to my left, and if the mayor isn't available, the Mayor Pro Tem acts as mayor. We also have the Sheriff, Donna Tompkins, is here. And let's see, any other elected officials at this time? If I see them come in, I'll recognize them as they do. But this is, as I said, for you. I'm going to provide a very brief overview of the city and what's going on, and let the city manager say a few words, and then it's your show. For 75 minutes, we're going to have you, the citizens, asking us questions. Before we get started, I want to thank the Youth Advisory Council for hosting us tonight. We're so very glad to have you engaged at such an early age with your government. Government's important. It affects your life every single day. And we spend too much time, frankly, making fun of it and disrespecting it, because government is not this island in the ocean somewhere. It's us, you see? And so it's sort of weird when you make fun of your government or talk about hating your government. Well, that's us. So why would we be doing that? You choose who leads you, and you have, particularly at the local level, access to those individuals. So it's one of the most important things you can do is be involved in citizen engagement. And I'm so happy that at a relatively young age, you all have taken the opportunity to do that. Tell you a little bit about the city. You all know some, of course. We're a city of 200,000 individuals. We are the second largest city in the state of Georgia. We're the 16th largest consolidated government in the United States of America. So think about that a minute. People don't think about it. It's fairly rare to be a consolidated government, and it's fairly complex because you're dealing with a county structure and a municipal structure on top of that. So there's a lot going on. It's interwoven, and you deal with state funds, federal funds, and then you deal with all of the things that the citizens expect day to day to happen and run correctly for their life. So the fact that Columbus, Georgia was probably one of the first 5 consolidated governments in the United States, certainly the first in Georgia, and that we're the 16th largest consolidated government in the United States, begins to tell you this is pretty important, what's going on here. The fact that we are or immediately next to one of the largest military training bases in the world, Fort Benning, the Maneuver Center of Excellence, certainly the international headquarters of AFLAC, as you well know. And as you all know, we have the longest urban whitewater course in the world, right? Now, everybody thinks I'm kidding when I say that, but if you've ever been to a whitewater course, you weren't in an urban area. You were usually in the woods somewhere. So we're one of the very few, and certainly the longest, that's in an urban area. We have a budget of $270 million. That sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. I will tell you that per capita, though, we actually, meaning per person, we actually provide the government of Columbus, Georgia, at one of the lowest rates of any city in the state of Georgia. So we provide government at just over $1,300 per person. Cities like Augusta are more in the $1,600, $1,700 range. You start getting into cities like Savannah, and they're providing services at about $2,200 per person. So we do pretty good. We have priorities set by our citizens. We have about 40% of our budget goes to public safety. And we spend more per capita on public safety than most all communities in the state of Georgia. We beat Augusta and Savannah and Macon and Athens and all those cities that are comparable in size to Columbus, Georgia. So we do pretty good. We're proud of our priorities here. We have a very intensive city council, 10 part-time city councilors, but I bet you if you got them in a corner and talked to them, it doesn't feel like part-time most of the time. It feels like full-time all the time, just like being mayor. So that's a little bit of the background. The mayor is full-time, city manager is full-time, which frankly is a little different. When you go to a lot of cities and counties throughout Georgia, a lot of times there's not a full-time mayor, there's a part-time mayor. There may be a full-time county manager, but there's usually a part-time county commissioner. So in Columbus, you get some pretty intensive government in that you have 2 full-time executive officials, one elected and one appointed, so that one's accountable directly to the people, and the other has the opportunity to be more of a professional and long-time serving individual who hopefully is keeping politics out of things, right? So that's a little bit about Columbus to kind of set up the framework and hopefully grease the wheel a little bit of some of the questions you guys may want to ask. We want to talk about everything from jobs and opportunities and what we're doing to grow this community and make it a place that you want to stay and be educated in, or if you go away to be educated or join the military, that you come back to Columbus, Georgia, because you want to be here to invest in this community and to raise your family. I want to recognize Councilor Mike Baker has joined us. Thank you so much for being here. He represents District 5, which is actually, Mike, is it this area?
Across the street.
Right across the street. Okay. Well, Evelyn or Mike, would you all like to say anything to get us kicked off? You good? All right, good. Well, you change your mind, you let me know. I'm going to turn it over to the city manager, and then you guys get ready for the first question, because it's your show after that.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon to each of you. I will try to be brief so that we can get right to your questions. And so, with that said, I want to just take my couple of minutes to recognize the Youth Advisory Council. And I'd like to do that because I had the fortunate opportunity in the year 2000, before you were born, likely. How many of you were born after 2000? After 2000. Before you were born, Mayor Pro Tem Evelyn Pugh and Councilwoman Mimi Woodson had gone to a National League of Cities event, and they had a youth advisory council, and I was deputy city manager at that time before you were born. And they came back and they said, you know, we witnessed something great, a youth advisory council. I believe it was in Killeen, Texas or somewhere, a couple of different places, and they wanted to do it right here in Columbus. And they asked me to get that off the ground, and I was able to do it, and we started the Youth Advisory Council in the year 2000, and we did it for middle school students through high school, both public and private schools. And I am proud that you're still strong today. In fact, after we organized our Youth Advisory Council, it was so great that they asked me to come to the International City County Managers meeting and explain our process to them, and I did. But the Youth Advisory Council was engaged then, and you're still engaged today. In fact, I know that you probably know or you've heard that the Youth Advisory Council, because we have the ice rink, because we have the skateboard park down at South Commons, it was a result of the work of the Youth Advisory Council, where the Youth Advisory Council members actually went around and had public meetings. And the Youth Advisory Council members led the public meetings to get that ice rink and to get that skateboard park. Youth Advisory Council members before you did it. And then the Youth Advisory Council tackled the dress code for the entire Muskogee County School District. you were going to meet with the superintendent at that time and with school board members, and you were able to stand before the Muscogee County School Board, and they came up and they adopted a dress code for students in the Muscogee County School District. The Youth Advisory Council was instrumental in doing that, and so we are proud of Columbus. We're proud of the investment our elected officials have made in Columbus. We've spent more than $100 million in parks and leisure services here in our city to make sure that there are quality of life projects for our young people as they come along. And then in recent years, the Chamber of Commerce, going to visit other cities, have a group called the Young Professionals. And so it starts with the middle and then the high school, and then after you go off to college and come back and start your careers, there's a Young Professional group. And I often say to my department heads, if you don't have millennials, young professionals in your office, you're missing out on something. And I mean that, and I'm going to say this, and it's a joke on me, really, I think, for young people. I was talking to some young people, and they wanted to send me some information, and Mayor, and so I gave them my personal email address, and it's an AOL address, and they started laughing, and I'm wondering, what are they laughing at? Because my personal email is American Online, Hughley at AOL.com, and they're like, AOL? I'm like, yep, see, you're laughing. And they just laugh, and they're dying laughing, and I'm wondering, what's so funny? They says, man, do you pay for that? And, but have you heard of AOL, American Online? I'm just checking, but I do have a Gmail address also. But we're proud of our young people and what the contributions that you've made or making, and the fact that we give you the opportunity to have your say and make your contribution. So thank you, and we hope you'll participate tonight. This is your city, it's our city, and when you go off to school, we expect you to come back and do your duty to carry Columbus forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. All right, let's get to it. We'll go until about 7:15, and then after that, we'll break. We've got tables outside so that if you have more specific questions about a particular department or office, they're set up outside, and so you can get with them. And they also have a few little knickknacks that you may want to take as a souvenir. So let's go ahead and hear our first question. You can just come straight to the mic or raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. Now, you can't be shy. If you talk for 5 minutes to the press, I know you're not shy. There's a few of them out there I saw. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay. We've been talking a lot at council about the fact that Columbus is about to have a total of 60 miles of bike trail. And so right now we have, about 30 or so. We're going to add another 27. And so we wanted to find a way to market this and connect it. But the objective is to not just have one trail that goes from point A to point B. We want to have a grid. We want to have a connected series of bike trails so that you can go from your house to your school to the park, maybe to the store, and back to the house, right? And so you don't have to have a car to get around for some simple trips. So we have, the council has approved the Dragonfly Trail. There will be different spurs of the trail that are colored yellow or red, green, blue, whatever it may be, so you know whether you're on the Follow Me Trail or the Fall Line Trace, certainly the Riverwalk. But basically the Riverwalk is going to be the spine of this trail system, and then off of it there's going to be all of these different spurs, and it's going to be really remarkable. You're going to be able to navigate all around this community on a bicycle, or as a pedestrian. And a lot of those bike lanes and pedestrian paths are going to be what we call dedicated, meaning you're not sharing the road with an automobile. So that you will be much like, has anybody here been on the fall line trace over there off Talbotton Road? Okay. So you know how you're not sharing it with cars, right? They're over on the road. So you feel more protected. You see mothers strolling their babies and people walking or running and listening to music because they're not worried about automobile traffic. Well, a lot of these trails are actually going to be dedicated. In fact, today I understand, I don't know if it was completed, maybe the city manager knows, but today we began relining the road 13th Street, which goes from Lake Bottom Park to the river. So it's called the Woods to Water Trail, and it's going to go over the viaduct there where the railroad is. That's always been something that maybe wasn't as attractive, right? Because you had chain link fence and was overlooking sort of this industrial rail yard. But frankly, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So we're going to be improving that, making that a little bit better view, making it feel like it's more inviting for pedestrians and cyclists. And I think it's going to be a really cool place. I think we're going to see people stopping to take photographs and not having to worry about being hit by a car. I think we're also going to see, thankfully, cars slowing down. Because when you have too many lanes and the lanes are very wide, then you have people going very, very fast. So if you live near Lake Bottom or have the opportunity to play ball at Lake Bottom and you want to go meet your parents down for dinner in Uptown, you can do that by following the Woods to Water Trail over the 13th Street Viaduct. That's just one example of how we're changing the way you interact with the community. And I'll say this quickly and then see if Rick or the city manager wants to add anything. But the reason why we're doing that, for a couple of reasons. One, we really have to start rethinking transportation capacity, right? And the reason why is because it's very expensive. You just can't keep adding lanes and lanes and lanes and parking decks. And so there are some trips that can be taken on a bicycle or on foot. And we need to provide those options to you. Also, there are some communities in Columbus where there's a very low percentage of automobile-owned homes. Those people should have an opportunity to enjoy their community without having to buy a car. And frankly, today, there's a lot of you all that don't want to own a car. They don't want to own a car. It's not like it used to be. And so we have to start thinking of these things because we want to build a city that you want to be a part of. And so if we have an auto-centric city, if you have to have a car to get around, if you have to be next to a car to go out and take a walk, then we're not serving what your generation is wanting and demanding of cities. And so what you see in these trails is a direct result of us getting ready for you all to take leadership and to become the citizens, the workers, the voters, the parents in this community. So that's what those trails are about. Yes, it's for exercise. Yes, it's for recreation, but it's also for transportation in a very real way. One other quick thing about Metra. Rosa's here. Yeah, Rosa, raise your hand. Rosa's over our Metra Transit service. You know, for years and years, the car was king, right? And so everybody had to have their own car. And so there were a lot of people that didn't want to take the bus or thought maybe the bus system wasn't good enough to be on. Well, we got to change that. We got to flip that script. And the reason why is because you all, the millennials, are demanding that we have transit systems that take you where you need to be. So you don't have to own a car. And you don't have to worry about sitting in traffic. You can be on the internet all the way to work or all the way to school. And so we've recently invested in remaking our transit system so we have more routes, so they move more quickly, so they service your needs. And I can tell you that that service is only going to expand and become better, a better utilization of our transit system than we've ever had before, because you, the millennials, are demanding it and expecting it. And we cannot be a competitive city without a great transit service. So, did I leave anything out about bike trails? Okay. All right. All right. What else? Yes. And just state your name.
I'm Frank Lumpkin.
Yes.
Well, what I would ask, I guess, like Columbus is kind of an island of sorts. We're not really close to anything. We're kind of isolated. And what really like connects a city, I'd say it's this infrastructure, meaning like interstates, airports, trains. Columbus doesn't really have any of that. I mean, we have an interstate, but it's a cul-de-sac. I mean, you know, it's been said Columbus sits on the end of the world's largest cul-de-sac. Our airport only has flights that go to Atlanta, Hartsfield, Jackson. What's being done to improve these sorts of things to greater connect Columbus to the rest of the world?
Wow. Aren't you good? And by the way, we did not coordinate that. So this is one of my very favorite subjects, and thank you so much for asking that question. And I love the fact that a millennial asked that question. You're exactly right. Many, many years ago, for you all who don't know this history, I was not here during this history. I wasn't born during this history. But there was a time where Columbus was supposed to be on 85, right? Opelika and Auburn, right? West Point. But the city leaders at that time wanted to stay closed. They didn't want a lot of people coming here, didn't want a lot of strangers. We just want to keep it us. And we realized that that's a very quick way to die on the vine. So they made that decision, and Columbus started losing opportunities, job opportunities, economic development opportunities. Population didn't want to, people didn't want to move here because there wasn't a lot going on. We hadn't built the infrastructure to make ourselves an exciting and vibrant city. Kids started going and never coming back. People started going other places for other opportunities. And so we realized pretty quickly we'd made a mistake. And we need to remember it, right? I mean, just like in your personal life, when you make a mistake, you need to file that away so you don't repeat it. And we need to remember that thinking small is not a way to have a vibrant city or a very vibrant community, neighborhoods and so forth, and with a lot of opportunity. So one of the things we've been looking at, we've kind of got parts. We tried to cobble it together after the fact. The cul-de-sac, we are on the spur of 85, 185, so we are on the interstate. It's just sort of ends here. And we have this great airport. Do you know our airport could actually carry up to five carriers? We have that capacity. We have a great airport, but all we have is one carrier, and it's because of the infrastructure, the way it's set up. I'm going to tell you something. I think there's probably 2 or 3 people in this city that know this. Mayor J.R. Allen wanted our airport to be connected to the Atlanta airport with a train. It was his idea. I talk about it all the time. It was not Teresa Tomlinson's idea, I assure you. It was Mayor J.R. Allen's idea that those airports be connected, and the man was a genius. He was a genius. And the reason why was because if you can connect our airports, then there will be 5 carriers here. There'll be low-cost carriers. We'll be a low-cost carrier hub. We'll have airlines like JetBlue and Norwegian Air and some of those others. Why? Because they can fly into Columbus cheaper, offer lower fares, and then you can hike it on up to Atlanta if that's your ultimate destination for $41. This happens all over the world where there are cities that are connected, a larger airport, smaller airport, and they're connected by high-speed passenger rail. This isn't a pipe dream. We've already done this work. We've done a feasibility study, and we can tell you that in the first year of building a 90-mile high-speed rail up already owned right-of-way, up 185 and 85 to Hartsfield International Airport, we can tell you that that would be profitable in its first year of operation. It would have a 1.2 profitability ratio. So the revenues coming in from that first year of operation will pay for the operation and maintenance of that high-speed rail. When you have a 1.2 profitability ratio, the other thing that that tells you is that 0.2, that over what it costs to pay for the operation and maintenance of the line, you can use to service debt. So you can issue bonds to build it. Georgia already has a structure in place, a high-speed rail authority, that could issue those bonds, not the city of Columbus. People say this all, some of the misconceptions. We're not going to pay taxes to build a train all the way to, well, I'll tell you something. In Florida, guess who's building their high-speed rail? The private sector. Government's not paying a penny, not a dime. Not a dime. The private sector is paying for it. Why? Because they're going to make money off of it. And so if you do it right and you're ready for the opportunities as they come down the pike, we could have high-speed passenger rail. In fact, we've got one of the most feasible lines, potential lines, in the United States because we already own the right-of-way. You know, when you read in the paper about these boondoggles out in San Francisco trying to connect San Francisco and LA, and it's going to be $950 billion to build, right? Why? Because they're going to have to buy Mr. Smith's property and Mrs. Jones's property, and all the way from San Francisco to LA. You think that costs some money? Going to take some time? Yeah. We've got a spur and an interstate that really goes through some very, very rural land, right? It's not, things aren't built right up to 185 or 85 south of the airport. So we have one of the most viable plans for high-speed rail in the United States of America. And all we need is the political will, you all, to talk about it all the time. Talk about it all the time. That should be happening. How long would it take? 16 years. That's how long it would take to build. Although I will tell you, as you sit here and think this is a pipe dream, and it's not, that the Federal Rail Administration recently granted Columbus permission, which is very rare, granted Columbus permission to collapse the planning and environmental assessment process. So we've just shaved years and millions of dollars off the cost of planning and building for a high-speed rail. So we've got the parts, we've got the administrative structure. Now we just need to wait for the opportunity. And where do those opportunities come from? There's grants, there's things called Tiger grants. We applied for one $6 million grant recently. We're very competitive, and I don't know if we know for a fact we made the short list, but I can tell you because of the questions they asked us, I think we must have made the short list for that $6 million grant. Had we gotten that, we would have had all of our planning and designing paid for. And so we need to stop playing small game ball, you know, and we need to realize if you come up with a big idea, between the private sector and grants, people will fund that big idea. And gone are the days where you have to tax everybody to death for everything. It's not true. And so if you get creative with public-private partnerships, you can find a way to make these public-private investments that return multiple-fold for your citizens. So I want you guys to help us, the older folks, start rethinking. Because when older folks hear about high-speed rail, they think about these old clunkety-clunk trains, you know, that they had Amtrak, right? And a lot of those Amtrak lines have gone out of business. And so that's what older folks think. But we're talking about electric high-speed rail going up to 212 miles an hour. One stop in Noonan, 1.1 million trips. From Noonan to Atlanta would be 17 minutes. You don't think we'll sell some tickets? You don't think we'll sell some tickets? You think Atlanta's interested in that idea? Imagine how much money they would save on expanding lanes, right? From Columbus to the airport, 61 minutes with one stop in Noonan. If you had a straight train that didn't stop in Noonan, it'd be even faster. So this is real. It's very viable. Internet service, you know, the whole way. You don't have to think about it. Now somebody's going to ask me about driverless cars, right? That's the other thing I get. There's going to be driverless cars. There's no need to have high-speed rail. First of all, you know, I appreciate that. And that's right. If you have a driverless car, you can do the internet, presumably. And there's a whole liability thing going on, but we won't get into that. But if you've got driverless cars, you're still going to have lanes and roads and parking lots, right? You still have to have the capacity for those vehicles. When you've got a train, think of the money you're saving because you're not having to add lanes on every couple of years. That's where you save your money. So it's about thinking about how to change your capacity of transportation. And driverless or non-driverless cars make no difference in the equation. So you can go to columbusga.org/planning, and the whole study is there. And it's really incredible. Very, very persuasive and informative. So take a minute and check it out and help us older folks think about the future differently, you know? Start thinking forward, not backward. What else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody.
Good
My
evening.
name is Jerome Lawson,
Yes.
and one of my questions is, what part, in regards to the future and the progressiveness of Columbus, Georgia, does the ex-offender play? And the reason why I ask that is because you got a lot of people that are being released, and you got a lot of people who are out here right now that are on supervised or non-supervised probation or parole that are not given the opportunity to be productive citizens, to be a part of the future of this city. And it's very impending because a lot of people have given up in the community. And when you have that type of attitude, they don't contribute to the progress, but rather the problem. So my question again is how, what is the city doing, not to accommodate them, but to help them be a part of this progressive move forward? Because you got a lot of people that want to help,
Yeah.
that has made some bad decisions in their life. And I'm not talking about the habitual violators. I'm talking
Right.
about people who sincerely are trying to be a part of this city that has done wrong in the city, but are trying to give back. And of course, we got companies that has policies that won't hire them. We got landlords that has policies that won't allow them to stay on their property.
Yeah.
So when we close doors, it's kind of like, what can we do if we're not given a fair opportunity to contribute to
Yeah.
the forwardness of this community?
Yeah. First of all, Jerome, thank you for what you're doing in the community to open this conversation. Your actions and dialogue don't go unnoticed, so thank you. And I'm going to answer your question, but I also want to hear, I'll just give warning to Seth. And I know Moffat's here, the public defenders. It doesn't really get into this, but you may know something just because of the line of work you do, so I might call on you at the end. But thank you so very much. It's so important, I guess humanity sort of ebbs and flows, right? We go through these chapters in our history, and so we've spent a very long time locking people up and having sentencing guidelines and being tough on crime, and that's great. That's great. But what do you do when somebody served their time? And so now the nation as a whole has, frankly, generations of people who have served time for nonviolent crimes, who very much want to put their life back on track, but the limitations that have been placed upon them, as you said, with housing, people with records pay so much more in housing than a regular individual because you can't get these Section 8 vouchers. You can't get. There's so many limitations and regulations that you just can't have access to other opportunities. You also have, as you said, prohibitions against work, and the city used to be like that too, right? We would ask for applications, and I think even on the website on the application, didn't it say? If you had a record, don't apply. But now we've become what's the phrase I'm looking for? Check the box, right? Ban the box community with our city. So we no longer ask that question. We grade people on their qualifications, their experience, judge their application on its face. Then as you get closer to the job actually being offered, there will be obviously a drug test. That's a requirement of ours. But if you're on the straight and narrow and getting your life back online, then you're okay with it, right? And also a criminal background check. But if you told the truth on your application and it is nonviolent and not like a financial crime, for instance, and you're trying to get into the finance department, then those opportunities are still there for you. So we're leading by example, and I will tell you, the conversation, and even, I'll say Governor Deal has been having this, opening this conversation up, because we're cutting ourselves off to millions of people that are economic assets, resources for our community, who are not being able to economically contribute. So those are some of the things we're doing. I'm going to ask Seth to talk about some of the specific programs, but one, we're trying to lead by example on Ban the Box. We're also participating, the Chamber, which used to be a pretty, I guess a lot of people thought, a pretty closed or exclusive club, right? They're leading the conversation on that, and their prosperity initiative is we cannot have thousands and thousands of people who are unemployable because of mistakes they made a long time ago. And because it is a rock around the neck of this community. Not just that it's not the right thing to do, and it's not fair, it's not just, it's not moral, that conversation. But you're wasting your resources, your human resources. And so just since I've been in office for 6 years, that conversation has radically changed. If you had stood up and said that 6 years ago, people would have thought. But now people are having that conversation every day. I was just at a Prosperity Initiative meeting this morning where we were talking about that very thing. So Seth, tell us a little bit about some specific programs.
Well, I first want to thank Jerome. Jerome's and I've had many conversations, and he's always been an advocate from this. He's a very successful entrepreneur, and he could easily turn a blind eye to this, but instead he stands up on a consistent basis to try to make change. The biggest thing that we've done is the Columbus Tech program that our office designed. It had roughly an 86% success rate of hireability, and it was a training program as well as a vocational, tied into all kinds of things. We provided an outfit for the individuals. We provided interview techniques, training on different vocational programs. The problem is the state changed the parameters, so it's on kind of hiatus right now, and we're trying to revamp it. Well, I say we. Jamie Lloyd, who runs the program out of Columbus Tech, is revamping it because they've changed kind of how we can deal with people that are coming out of the prison system. We do have a program with Urban League right now that is probably a lighter version of what Columbus Tech was doing, but it also provides job training and connections with resources to companies and those kind of things. I want to say the biggest thing that we did was the educational component. A lot of employers did not know that there were lots of benefits for hiring former felons. Tax credits, bonds, you could have a security bond for your company, educational benefits. There were all kinds of things that went along with that. And the reason that these individuals were not hiring former felons, even in all cases nonviolent, was because they were afraid to, because they thought, okay, well, what if they did this or this? And the bond took care of that. So we partnered with the state as well as Columbus Tech in trying to educate employers on how it would benefit them to step out and take, I say take that risk, but it actually made more sense to hire nonviolent felons than it did to hire average Joe. It was more beneficial. A tax write-off and a bond that you could get with the employee. So that's what we're doing now. The new grant cycle is coming up now, and I've already spoken to some people that could be offering similar programs. The Columbus Tech program, obviously we want to get back up and running, but Jamie Lloyd's, like I said, is trying to revamp that. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we also want to meet state guidelines. So that's kind of where we are at this point.
Thank you. And I would say also, Jerome, one other thing, when Seth mentioned that you're an entrepreneur, this is the era of entrepreneurs and innovation, as you well know. There's going to be more people starting businesses and innovating, inventing than ever before. And sociologists have been expecting this now for 10, 15 years as they watch the millennials and expect what this generation is going to do. And so there's a real opportunity for people that don't fit into what has been through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, this corporate narrowness, right? That everybody has to conform to a particular corporate culture or you can't be in it. And now the job and economic development potential is really broadening. So I know, as you sit there, that's a little solace, but when you have something, look, I would love to come in and be able to pass an ordinance that just that ain't no problem anymore. It's gone. Nobody can discriminate in housing, nobody can discriminate in jobs, you just have to, but that's not the way it works. It's just not. And so when you have a systemic problem, an issue of having locked up generations of people without a plan to what to do when they serve their time and get out, then you're going to have systemic solutions. And so, trust me, I understand and share the frustration, but I can't tell you already how, as I said before, that's shifted. And people talk about it all the time because somehow now we realize that it's not just hurting the people that are being penalized, it's hurting everybody. So I'd say stay tuned. The way I've been seeing it move in 6 years, in 3 years, I think it's just going to be one of those exponential things where it moves faster and faster. Yes, sir. That's right. Let's get a microphone because those on TV can't hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
We,
feel like it's really important that we kind of
sure.
hone in on this particular part. Now, I noticed that you and Seth said non-violent felonies.
Yeah.
But we got to keep in mind, what about the violent felons who've made one bad decision? Because it's kind of like saying a man who rapes a grown woman versus a man who rapes a younger woman is still a rape. You know, crime is a crime.
Yeah.
And when we differentiate to the point where we're still leaving that area to where we're still leaving people out, and the reason why I brought that up is because, and you mentioned systematic or systematic solutions. We do need those because we have to get to a place to where, as we look at America as a country, you know, we don't deal with racism like we have dealt with it because we came up with a systematic solution. And so now we have to look at it like, if we can't hold America accountable and if we're willing to forgive America for what it has done to a particular people, then now we have to look at it like we have to move forward wholeheartedly from people as felons. And I speak as a felon because when you still leave that area to say, well, you still robbed somebody, but the guy was 15, 14, 13, and you committed a crime and you haven't been back to jail. Like me, I haven't been back to prison since I was 16, but yet and still my record still speaks for who I am rather than myself. And until we face that forward, saying, okay, no matter if you're a violent felon or a non-violent felon, you still deserve a second chance.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the area that I'm trying to get at. We can't look at it like non-violent because we don't know the situation or disposition the people are in. So therefore, it doesn't matter what you've done if your history shows that you've redeemed yourself and changed. It don't matter if it's violent or non-violent. We still have to create an opportunity because a lot of people don't know that when you break the law, you lose your citizenship. And that's not fair because if you take my citizenship and I'm a child, you made me an adult so that you could take my adult citizenship. So now that I'm an adult, I can't enjoy the rights as a citizen and I can't protect myself as a citizen, but I have to pay taxes as a citizen. So my thing is we have to approach this and not leave that area to say, well, violent versus non-violent. We just have to say a person who's changed versus a person who hasn't.
Yeah, and it's a very good point, and I think it exhibits the fact that I qualified that language, that we're evolving too slowly to address a broader problem, right? I told you I just engaged in a conversation about it today, and so here I come in and I repeat nonviolent offender to you because we're talking about it a lot, but we're talking about it, we're compartmentalizing, and you're right, there's so much more to do, and in fact, if we wanted to spend the whole rest of the time talking about it, there's even other, as you well know, categories of individuals who are so marginalized because of crimes that they have committed but served their time. There's some real issues. And so we're very, very good at making up laws, convicting people, and getting people into jail. We have not come up with ways to what happens after that. And so I appreciate the conversation. I promise you I'll continue it. I didn't know, Moffett, anything to add, or have we pretty much covered it? Is there any perhaps resource that you could refer people to that, or have we covered it pretty much?
I do know that Governor Deal has been over the past several years and will continue to do this has been coming up with programs and ways to help people integrate back into society, such as, I think, right now they're dealing with how long people are put on probation. Because, if somebody's on probation and they have to report in and all that, it makes it much more difficult to do their job if they actually can find one.
Yeah.
So they're looking at ways right now in Atlanta to help people out. And the city of Columbus is also doing that.
Thank you, Jerome. Important conversation. Let's see. Yes, sir. Right here. Yeah.
My name is James Nelson. I just want to piggyback on the question young man asked you about the infrastructure.
Yes.
And on the south end of the Benning Technology Park,
Yes.
and on the north end with Williams Road and Smith area, is that land up for development? Because I know I've been seeing some signs for a few years now
Yeah.
that for development, because them two ends of 81, 85 are crucial to Columbus.
Yeah.
Because, once you leave Williams Road, that stretch here into Atlanta, there's nothing. So we, especially when it was the construction of the I-85
Yeah.
lower end, I wonder why they didn't make an exit on Casita Road.
Ooh, aren't you something?
I always wonder, because you can't,
Yeah.
everybody who's rising in Columbus
Yeah.
is not from Columbus.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're good. Let me tell you what, you're not a planner or anything. You hadn't been.
I actually wanted to go to school for that, but.
Well, I'm telling you what, you had some natural ability. Because let me just tell you two things you said. I don't even know if you knew, but you got a sensibility of it. First of all, when you're trying to develop an area, one of the first things you want to do is bookend it, right? And then you fill in between, because it's just hard to start a place over here and move up. So if you want to bookend it and fill in, it usually you're going to move a lot faster. So you said Williams Road, and then what's going down in Fort Benning Technology Park. So that's exactly, what's going on, is that we're starting to bookend our community and fill in from the perimeter. So very good. And we can talk specifically about that. I might turn it over to Pam or the city manager, say a few specific things about that project. A couple things about Casita Road and the interchange. It wasn't initially built with an interchange, probably because there wasn't a lot of population at the time that it was built. They didn't feel they needed it. But it was looked at some time ago, but of course, there are some neighborhoods right there. There's a very prominent historic church, in fact, sits right there.
Right.
And so, the first time it was brought up, right, people got up in the morning and it said, "We're going to build a big old road through your church and neighborhood." Well, you imagine how that went over, right? And so it got voted down. And now, actually, we got the opportunity to put it on the T-Splost. Didn't know if T-Splost was going to pass or not, but we put it on there and it passed. So now we got the money to pay for it, and we went to the church and the neighborhood first. And we said, if we get this money, can we work with y'all to figure this out?
Yes, ma'am.
And they saw it a different way. And so we are going to be putting that interchange there.
And I want to add, okay, just say you coming from US 27, you exit on 185.
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning. The only gas station visible if you don't go to racetrack on Victory Drive is at Chevron on Casita Road.
Yeah.
If you don't get gas there, I don't know where you're going to get it at.
Right, right.
And another thing on the spider web, I always thought like them build like an outer loop, like toward downtown, going toward the where the lumberyard used to be at. If you take the spider web, in which you finna do construction on it, right?
Right,
Go through where the rail yard, like on the opposite end of Martin Luther King,
right.
and have that end right there between where the county jail is.
I tell
That'll
you
be
what.
another loop.
He's talking about improving MLK because it comes off the spider web. I'm putting you on the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Transportation. I'm just saying, you got a natural sense of it. Not only, you're right, we're going to be doing the spider web, right? Because we've got the situation where we got a big old train comes by twice a day at least and holds everything up. And we got at least 5 roads coming in there. But you're absolutely right. We're taking the opportunity to not only go over the railroad tracks. Initially, we wanted to go under and leave the earthen plain for development, right? Because there's some stores there and there could be more.
Right.
But there's that Bull Creek right there. It's just too wet. We couldn't. So we're going over. But when you come down and you hit MLK, this is providing us an opportunity, together with some other funding we had for another project, to put a dedicated bike lane, pedestrian lane down MLK, improve that road substantially, and actually there's going to be an outdoor learning and history center along MLK headed in to Uptown. So you still have the issue of, once you get into the downtown area, getting over the rail yard, which is an issue. And maybe we can go under there someday. But I'm going to say this publicly because I think they need to hear it publicly. The railroads aren't really easy to work with.
One more thing.
They're not particularly friendly when it comes to cooperating. And I'm going to say that because they just sent us a nasty email about us trying to work with something. So, but I'm hoping that in the near future, we're going to be able to get a much more cooperative relationship with the railroads, because it's not just Columbus that they've built right smack in the middle of, and we've got to figure out a way to get people around those railroads safely, for the railroad's sake. But what else you got?
One more thing. Is there a height ordinance downtown as far as buildings?
A height ordinance for the buildings. I don't, who would have that? John? All right, we've got our, John. John's in Savannah at a conference. John, is there a height ordinance on the buildings downtown?
No.
That's it? No?
Depending on the type of construction, there are height requirements. So obviously, a wood building would not be as tall as a concrete building. So just depending on the type of construction that the building is made of, there's a chart that we go by that will limit the height and the size of the building.
How about in the historic district?
No, there's no, now, like I said, appearances, there are things with facades, and I believe there's something in the design guidelines, but I don't know specifically on a height.
Yeah, I think on, my recollection is in the historic districts, I served on BHAR for a while, I think houses can only be so high, like 3 stories. You can't have a 4 or 5 story house or anything like that. But obviously our government center is 11, 12 stories when you add the cap we got on it. So if you want to invest in a multi-story
Mayor.
building, you can do so. Yeah, oh, yes, Rick.
Let me add on to John's comments here.
Okay.
The zoning itself does establish height limitations for buildings throughout the community itself.
Okay,
in
what
some
are
cases-
those, Rick, by the way?
Typically, right down in the uptown area itself, it's about 35 feet. That's not to say you can't go beyond 35 feet, but that's the normal height we look at, and trying to limit that height based on the requirements and his building codes and things of that nature. But typically, there are height restrictions in every zoning classification we have.
So if you do that, then you just have to come and get a variance.
That's correct.
Right, and you have to show why you want it and that it doesn't hurt anybody, and then council gets to vote on it. Okay. All right. Great question, though. See? You taught us all something. Yeah.
I don't want to leave out the young people, and they're awfully quiet, and that's bothering me. You know, in your state of the city, you ask citizens or you challenge them to put a big idea on the table. And so I talked about the Youth Advisory Council in the early years. Their big idea or ideas, they wanted that ice rink that we ended up with an ice rink, and we spent close to $7 million on the ice rink because of a big idea from the Youth Advisory Council. And then your other big idea, or their other big idea, was the skateboard park. And we spent close to $1 million on the skateboard park. So I guess I'm asking you, Mayor, to challenge the young people like you did the adults with big ideas. So I'd like to know what is the big idea for the young people?
Let's hear it. The city manager is absolutely right. I said, let's come up with big, bold, audacious ideas. What's your big, bold, audacious idea? Mayor Pro Tem.
Hello. I'd like to challenge the youth as I did back then. Carver's Park is one of the oldest parks in this community. It's landlocked, so you can't expand it. And it's not really used wisely. I like to challenge the youth council to come up with some idea to have a park out in an area, because we have that NFL land out there, to come up with a possible design for a park in that part of the city.
Okay. We can have the president of the Youth Advisory Council put that down on a list of things you guys can talk about. I think that's an awesome project. And if Frank had something, I want to recognize our district attorney, Julia Slater. Either I missed her or she came in late, but thank you. Thank you for being here. Frank, you wanted to give us a big, bold, audacious idea.
Well, sure. Well, I have two grandiose ideas. One's much smaller scale. One is very large scale. It'd actually be a federal project that the city of Columbus, the state of Georgia, and everyone would work with. First of all, I was speaking to one of my coaches who's actually from out of town, Louisville, Kentucky. And when she came down here, she thought it was the weirdest thing because we have football games, high school football games on Friday and Thursday nights. And we only have 2 locations for football games. Coming from Louisville, of course, Louisville's a population of 500,000 plus, much larger than Columbus. But I think a project would be to maybe build another stadium so we don't have Thursday night football for high schoolers. Because I like to stay out late when I go to a game, and going to Columbus High, I got schoolwork the next day due. So. I think that's definitely something to consider. I think it'd be amazing, like possibly at Lake Bottom, to turn that into like a stadium, a high school stadium, because that way you'd be right in the center of Midtown, and it would just kind of be something else to do in Midtown. Of course, it's across the street from Columbus High too, so I like that. But I think that would be a really great project for the Youth Advisory Council to take on. Another thing that I've just kind of grown interest in lately is there's a proposed route for a new interstate that would go through Columbus. I don't know if you're familiar with it, I-14, going from, I think it's Galveston, Texas to Augusta, Georgia. The most recent update with that is in, I believe it is Texas. They're already building parts of it and actually physically putting up I-14 signs. I know Louisiana's given them some trouble, but I think most of the state boards have passed it. Of course, please excuse my lack of knowledge on the topic. I'm just starting to kind of read up on it, and I'd like to actually start, kind of a just interest group. But I just thought it was something I'd bring up, and as mayor of Columbus, you could maybe talk about it at some of the meetings. I don't think that's something that Youth Advisory Council could necessarily tackle. I think the stadium would be much more feasible. But as the city government in Columbus and your connections with the state and the federal level, I think it'd be an amazing thing to kind of look into, and kind of adding to what I was saying about infrastructure earlier. So if you want to say anything about that.
Awesome. How in the world did you learn about I-14? Just by the way. I bet if I had asked for hands, there have been less than 10 people in here that even knew what I-14 was. How do you know about I-14? Yeah.
All right, well, I have always been looking for a way, for some reason since I was little, to expand I-185, because I thought that was the way, that's what Columbus needs to do. But that's ridiculous, because you'd have to go straight through Fort Benning. Or if you went around Fort Benning, it would just be longer. I always wanted I-185 to go straight down to Panama City. Thought it'd be a quick trip to the beach. But of course that wouldn't work, like I said, because of the military. And then I just kind of started looking up future interstates of the United States. And I-14 was on a wiki page, and I just kind of read more into it. I had heard some other talks about it, but I just kind of looked it up one day, and there's also a expansion, I think on I-20, or not I-20, whatever interstate goes through Birmingham to bring it down to Columbus. And then there is plans for an expanded I-185, but the I-14 has actually been approved though. The studies have been done with Exactly. So, and like I said, they're building parts of it out in Texas. So I think it's something that's going to happen. I just like to expedite the process.
Do you want to be on our Citizens Advisory Committee for Transportation? Rick, I'm just telling you, I got you two members already. First of all, yes and yes, and how awesome. You're totally right about the stadiums. I'll tell you a couple things. One, there's going to be a new Spencer High School built, and it has sort of a mega stadium built in. So that's going to give you one more. That's great. And there's always talk, although I hope I don't start a rumor that they put out somehow, but there's been, if they have, it's going to be resurrected. There's been a lot of talk about CSU getting football. Yes, no, who knows? And I don't know if they're going to take a straw poll and decide or what the future is. So don't publish, Ben, that the mayor said there's going to be a football team at CSU. But they've been talking about it a lot and weighing it, and if they did, you'd be talking about some sort of facility there. So awesome idea, and I can say there's a lot of people thinking about those kinds of things. So the other thing, I-14, Rick, I want to hear an update on I-14. And yes, there are plans actually to run 85 on down to Panama City, isn't it, Rick? But it cost us a gazillion dollars. So tell us about I-14 and I-85.
I-14 was a project that was done by Congress probably about 5 years ago in terms of looking at a route really running from just north of Augusta. It was supposed to have a terminus at Meridian in Mississippi. And the idea was it was going to connect Augusta, Macon, Columbus, and it was going to go into Montgomery and on into Mississippi. They did the initial study on it, and we were part of that study. But the problem we had with it was, where was the road going to actually come through Columbus? I mean, they were looking at, of course, coming down J.R. Allen Parkway, but when you get down to a certain point, right there at Flat Rock Road, it breaks back into it goes from a limited access highway to a full access, meaning there are neighborhoods and businesses on both sides. And if you had allowed that to go in there to be a 4-lane with limited access, you're going to take out the businesses in the neighborhoods that were around that. And so we raised some real objections to that. And I think they saw that with a lot of other communities because they just didn't want to go in there like they did with the interstates when they first started building interstates and wipe out neighborhoods. We certainly didn't want to have that as well. They were looking at, I think, also some routes to the south, around Fort Benning, and of course north of us as well. But I don't think they ever gained any real physical strength on that one, or any physical strength from the financial side of it. I just don't think it ever materialized. I don't know of any funding that's actually going on in Texas or anything else with this project. Not to say it won't materialize sometime in the near future. It could well be under this new administration. But for the time being, we have not had any action on I-14 occurring at all.
Well, Frank was saying he'd heard that they started some construction, so why don't we do this? Why don't we look into it and see?
Glad to.
And update on CAC. The Citizens Advisory Committee is the transportation arm of basically the transportation planning function for this entire region. And it's very important, actually. I served on the board, and it was one of my most favorite boards and experiences ever. But you're on TV, and and citizens get to watch and hear these road projects debated. And you know, Rick's right. When you start trying to run a major interstate through an already developed area, you get back to that problem I was telling you about between San Francisco and LA with the train, right? But we do have some rural area north of us, and you know, you got a lot of minds, you can figure out a problem, so a challenge. So let's update it, Rick, on the next CAC meeting. That way it'll be televised, and maybe by that time you'll be on the CAC committee, and we can do that. The 85, you remember Sam bringing the proposal to the
Yes, ma'am. There was a study also done. They were looking at, in fact, the city of Albany actually initiated the study. They were looking at trying to get traffic back down, going through that part of the community down to actually Tallahassee, to tie that in and extend 185 on down. Again, I think the study came back though and said it was just not feasible. They looked at it, they did all due diligence on it, but again, nothing really materialized. And that's probably been at least another 5 to 7 years ago. So that's been well studied as well.
We do, and would that be on the planning website, Rick, if we went that particular study?
We can find it. We can put it on there. I don't believe it's on there right now.
Okay. Well, maybe we should, and since there's been some interest. But you know, I'll tell you what, in you know, Rick is accurate when he says these things come up and then they're not feasible or whatever. But a lot of things are not feasible until such time as they become feasible, right? So, you know, you just got to keep working it. You just got to keep working it. And that's what your generation should never forget. In fact, that's what old people depend on, young people, is that you're not tired. And you haven't learned to just say, well, it's not feasible, right? Because you think it can be solved, and that's what's important. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Robbie Branscombe. I thought since we were talking about roads, this would be a great time to ask a question about Winton Road. So I have an organization that's called Let's Grow STEAMex, and we work with youth with educational concepts of STEM. And so in our effort to bring relevant STEAM experiences,
Sure, that's all right.
In our effort to bring relevant STEAM experiences to the community for youth, we're going to be hosting or bringing back the Soapbox Derby this summer. And so we're going to be hosting it right on Winton Road. Our permit has already been approved. However, there is a booger of a bump in the road on Winton Road,
Where is that?
right there in front of the museum. So as you're going down the hill, there's a bump right there.
Okay.
Now, we can work around it, but in an effort to try to ensure the safety of the children as they're taking the soapbox racers down the hill, is there a way that we can somehow?
Excellent. I go over that bump every single day,
Yes.
so I live right there. Where's Donna? Donna, what is that bump and when's it going to be fixed? What's going on? Does it have something to do with that spring, or is it just something else? Something else, okay. This is Donna Newman, our Director of Engineering.
We actually have a couple of issues going on right there. You'll notice on the shoulder of the road, you'll see water flowing down through there. It's actually combined sewer. There are some old combined sewers in those areas that have collapsed, and we have a project designed and we have a contractor on board, and so we will be starting that in the near future. A lot of that work will have to be done at night simply because of the traffic. And the one that you're talking about is specifically in the middle of the road. So it's actually a sewer under there, storm and sanitary sewer combined, that is collapsing, if you will, that's causing that, and we have to dig it up to repair it. We've been working down in the historic district, and then we have another area that we're going to next, which we hope that's within the next couple of weeks, to get it repaired. It's under a federal mandate where there's a storm that was connected to the sanitary sewer. Then we're going to the Winton. So I would be very interested in the dates of that so we can see if we can coordinate around that, make sure that we're not out there under construction when you're planning this event.
Starting this spring break.
Okay, we need
Okay.
can you see Donna afterwards?
Sure,
Because
certainly.
I want to make sure that, you know, I know the police department granted the permit, 'cause they got to close the road, but I'm not sure they were privy to any sewer work that was going on.
Well, I'm glad I'm here tonight
Well,
to,
me too.
yeah.
Me too. By the way, I know some scholarships for STEM students, so.
Yes.
Sandy, or Amy.
Sure.
Yeah, Donna.
Okay.
Did you have something else?
No, that was all. Just make sure you get with me and I'll give you my card and we can stay in contact.
Certainly.
Yeah, we need to do that because I wouldn't want them to get there about the time you're going to get started. Yeah.
Hello,
Yes.
my name is Chastity Murray, and during youth advisories, our meeting sessions, the topic that mainly comes up is like teen activities and what can we do to keep ourselves out of trouble. Because I know like my generation, I'm 17-year-old, it's like going downhill. Like in schools, you see students doing stuff they don't have no business doing. On the weekends, you see people partying too much instead of just going to a place, have fun, and just go home. So like the question is, what can we bring to Columbus to get us teens out of trouble? Because I know like at school, some people bring up Dave and Buster's. It's like, we should have that. That's where all the money would go to. Because I know like me personally, I take trips to Atlanta just to go to Dave and Buster's or go to Six Flags. So what can we bring to Columbus to get us teens out of trouble?
Sure. Let me ask you something. What can we bring to Columbus that would get young people out of trouble?
I know one of them is like Dave and Buster's, and I know y'all brought Stars and Stripes here, but if you go there, it's like the bumper carts is smaller than this room. How can a teenager fit on the bumper cart and actually have fun? And it's like we're wasting our money going there because you really can't do nothing.
Yeah.
And then it's like we have I know Miss Lisa told us about the Skyline thing. I didn't even know we had that.
Yeah.
I never knew about it, but I'm too scared to do it because it's over water. So it's like I know the youth advisory, one thing we can do is plan. We can see we can research and see what we can bring to here, but it's like how can we talk to you or get in contact with you to do that project?
Well, I think a couple things. One, the city manager already mentioned what influence you all have as young people. And one of the worst things that old people can do, although I'm not admitting I'm old, I'm just saying, let's just say I'm a bridge between your generation and the old generation. It's not always good when older people try to determine what's going to interest young people, right? But so I would say, one thing I wonder when I hear young people say a lot of times there's not a lot to do. And yet I go to festivals like food truck festivals downtown and all different kinds of festivals, and they're awesome. There's music, there's people, there's activities, there's food. It's color and just awesomeness all over. And I wonder if young people, has anybody here been to a food truck festival or any of the festivals downtown? To me, that's really something positive to do. And yes, we've got the ice rink, and we've got the auditorium, and we've got the, but I do think what I hear a lot is this kind of entertainment package that young people are looking for. You know, one thing that would be very interesting that I'll give to the Youth Advisory Council that I know that the Community Foundation, which is an organization that funds a lot of projects here and gets a lot of grants, one thing that's very big is gaming teams, right? And so there are actually, older folks are used to, we've got the World Series and we've got the Super Bowl and all this, but there are gaming teams in other cities where they actually have semi-professional people who are made up of a team. They're gamers, and there's other gaming teams in like an Albany or a Macon, and they compete for championships. And people come out, and sometimes they're outdoor, doing outdoor gaming. Sometimes it's indoor in something like the Civic Center or the Trade Center. But that would be a really awesome thing. I've actually seen grant proposals for other cities to set up a semi-professional gaming team that called, competitors in, and then, of course, the playoffs and the championships and all that kind of stuff. But that would be more in line with the festivals. It would probably be downtown or someplace you had some population center in something like a civic center, but it seems like it'd be a ton of fun for young people. So I don't know if you'd be interested in that, but that's something I know that there is funding out there available for, and some cities are trying to get. So maybe the Youth Advisory Council can look at that and see if there's a real appetite. Other than an entertainment type facility like a Six Flags or Dave & Buster's, is there anything else that comes to your mind?
I know they said like the fair, when it comes down here, every year it gets smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And they was trying to figure out ways that we can make it bigger.
Yeah.
And I know they also said like the concerts. I know we just had a Gucci and T.I. concert. It was like, can we bring more people down here? Because I know those people made a whole bunch of money from those concerts because we hardly do it anyway for the teens. And then when y'all do bring a concert here, it's like country people or people that we don't know anything about.
We have some good concerts. We got a few good people.
We know about.
Right. So younger
said,
people. Well, you got the right man right here. John, raise your hand. John is, we're going to pass it over there. But John has just took over at the Civic Center, and he's in charge of getting acts here. And so he's listening. And I know also Ross Horner, who's now in charge of Uptown, is watching. And so he's hearing you, and very, very good point. So we need more hip acts for young people, more outdoor activities, and more entertainment-based functions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll look into that if you'll look into the gaming.
Okay.
Okay, all right, here we go. This young man, okay, right here, Sarah.
Hi, my name is Avante, and I go to Arnold. So, like, if you walk around Arnold, you see a lot of the paint and stuff on the walls is all falling off because Arnold's one of the older schools. You go to our gym, it's like one of the smallest gyms I've ever seen. So what is the city going to do to kind of fix up some of the older schools in Columbus?
Great question. Is there anybody here from the school board? Yes, excellent. We've got Melvin Blackwell. As Melvin comes to get a microphone, and tell me your name, young man. Avante. Okay. Avante, one thing, the reason why I'm having a call on this gentleman here is that in Georgia, the school district is separate from the city. So the mayor can't decide to build new schools, the city council can't decide to build new schools, but our school board can. So they're their own governing jurisdiction. That's why I'm kicking it to this gentleman right here. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that question. We do appreciate all those good questions and comments that came from the youth today. And I want you to know that Arnold, like all of our schools, are on our list as far as keeping our schools right, if you will, safe, and pleasing to the eyes. What happens is with tax dollars, we are working towards that, and there's a plan to improve Arnold. And you are so correct, too, that the school is one of the oldest in the city, if you will. And we are looking at that because it's actually costing us some money, if you will, just to keep it up because of the age of it, just like Spencer was. But we are in the process of working to bring that school up to standard and up to par. Thank you so very much for that.
Avante, thank you so much. I want to make sure we get all the students. So for the adults, I'm sorry, but we're going to make sure we get them. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Heaven Gilliard. I'm a graduating senior at Early College Academy, and usually when I say the name of my school, no one knows what it is. And it's like, you know, it's a school in Columbus, and it specializes in preparing high school students to take courses at Columbus State University. It's an awesome program called Move On When Ready. And another component of the school is that preparation that students are able to have to be successful at Columbus State University. I think that my school is just a little bit behind the pace when it comes to preparing students for college courses. We have one specific science, well, 2 science classes, and we've almost never done an experiment just because, or any type of hands-on activity just because we lack the tools and the, all of the things that you need to do those type of experiments. And so my question is, I think that's, well, going back to something else, I think that college preparation is vital. It's just from my experience, I've grown in so many aspects that the normal high school student isn't susceptible for. And I appreciate it so much, but I just love to see it grow. It's like 4 years I invested into that school, and the teachers, Shane Larkin was just nominated for Teacher of the Year, and he's an awesome teacher. We have awesome students, a dedicated student body as a whole, and I just feel like there's not enough support from the community to help us grow and to help students know that there's such valuable assets to college readiness and opportunities outside of high school that students should be prepared for, and once they get to that point, have something to move off of. So I kind of like to wonder, when will we, have more opportunities to have hands-on experiments? Another issue is probably our building as well. It's one of the historic buildings, and so our principal, Susan Willard, she talks about a lot how we can't really make adaptations to the school because it's historic, but at the same time, the bathrooms are awful. It's like, it's just like a school that feels forgotten, but there's so much promise to it. And so I feel like those schools should have a better opportunity because in my experience, it's helped so much. I take English 1101, English 1102, biologies, and such advanced courses, but yet we don't have that preparation. So you have some students that get there and have this opportunity in their hands, and they just lose it because they're not able to be prepared like how many others have the opportunity to do.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, you are a credit to the program that you have been in. because that was very, very well said. I'm going to have to let Mr. Blackwell answer that one again, because that would be a school district one, but I can tell you from an economic development standpoint and a prosperity initiative standpoint, we are very, very interested in high school students being college-ready and move on when ready and other such programs. So thank you for asking. Mr. Blackwell.
Early college is a great program, and we would like for those types of information and suggestions to improve schools and improve the curriculum to be brought up through the principal. And of course, we have a division for academics that tells us what are some of the shortfalls, if you will, as far as we're not meeting your academic goals and needs at the school. We want to hear those things from you, and we have a very good division, if you will, that will be able to address that. I do want to say that the early college has kind of evolved. It was located at Kendrick when it first came into fruition. It was just a part, if you will, it was a program. And Ms. Willard wanted to kind of be more independent, so she applied for her own school status, and at the time, we didn't have a facility. So making use of the best facilities that we had that particular time, that's the facility that was designated. So we are in progress. We are in change mode, if you will, and we do appreciate that. And I did take some notes on that as well as Arnold, and I'll be taking that back tomorrow morning, right, as I speak to the assistant superintendent and superintendent who could not be here today, Dr. David Lewis. He had a conflict with his schedule, and so I came in his stead. And I'm Melvin Blackwell. I'm Chief of Student Services for Muskogee County School District. But I did want to say, while I had the opportunity, to thank the Youth Advisory for putting this together so we can hear those types of things. And we need to hear it, like the mayor said, at the lowest level where we can get it done. And if it doesn't work at the building level, elevate it to the district where we will definitely take a look at it, because we appreciate what comes from our youth, those we serve. We want to know how we're doing. So I do appreciate that. And that will go back tomorrow.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking these great ideas and questions back. Last question, we're running a little over. Which one, this young lady? No, I want to, who wants to go? All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam George Sink, and I just had some minor concerns about road construction going on in northern Columbus, specifically on Veterans Parkway, starting all the way from Northside High School and Veterans Middle School as well, that entrance, going all the way down past the strip mall. Specifically closer to Northside, there are a lot of parts in the road where they're widening lanes to make it like almost an 8-lane road going there, but the road just kind of drops off where it's being constructed. And my dad and I have conversations about it on this way to school all the time, just that if someone were to be distracted even momentarily and veer slightly off, I mean, damage could be very serious, not only to their possessions in their car, but also to everyone around them and to the progress of the construction. So I was just wondering, when will that be kind of tail-ended? Because we've talked about a lot of long-term progressive things tonight, but I would say that construction's in its infantile stages. I just wanted to know when that would be finished. Yeah, thank you.
Can you speak, or would it be Donna? Who wants to take that, or Rick? Okay.
That project right now is scheduled to be completed by 2019. They are in the process of 4-lane that roadway. It'll be 4 lanes all the way up past American Way at that point. Excuse me. We actually bought enough right-of-way. Well, we were really demanded of us. We bought enough right-of-way from Federal Highway to actually accommodate a 6-lane roadway. But we said that was way too big. We'll stick with the 4-lane from that. I was told this afternoon that they're anticipating of flipping that road. In other words, they'll flip the traffic onto the new asphalt, probably in the next 30, 60 days worth at the most, and then work on the other side. The biggest problem they got to deal with is also getting the utilities out of the way so they can make that road happen. So that project, I'm expecting to be completed no later than 2019. It could be through, hopefully by the middle of 2018, maybe toward the end of 2018.
So this drop-off that the gentleman's worried about should be remedied in 60 to 90 days?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I'll go ahead and forewarn everybody else now, the other extension of that roadway where it goes up beyond Hancock, GDOT is now looking at widening that section of roadway up to Catala itself. That's actually a T-Splosh project. They're in the mix now of doing the early conceptual design work on that project. They should be coming out with public hearings, I hope, somewhere toward the end of this year, first of next, to start getting some public input about how that roadway is going to impact up there and how it's going to go into action to Harris County. So once the good news is, I guess, we're going to get through with this project you see now by the end of 2018, 2019. Bad news is we're going to come right behind it and build another 4-lane section behind that.
Would you check tomorrow, whether it's with Donna's group or the DOT, and just make sure there's proper signage and
Yes, ma'am.
warnings related to the drop-off? They usually have that stuff down, but I just want to make sure that they do. I know we have 2 questions of students left, and a gentleman here in the red, but we're over time, and I promised everybody they'd get out. So if you all will come up, I'll try to answer the questions if I can. I'll see who can, and you too, sir. And the rest of you all, thank you so very much for coming. We'll stay here for a few minutes, and of course, we got folks out back. But thank you. Let's give the Youth Advisory Council a round of applause.